Hi, Mom. James Elliott here. My pronouns are he/him. I want to talk a little bit today about how I have viewed myself as a parent over the years. This is one that is very personal to me because the indoctrination that I had as a child definitely had a huge impact on how I viewed the role that I was supposed to play when it came to raising our children. The Bible has a lot to say about the roles and duties of a faithful wife and mother, and I definitely knew what was expected of me. However, I used to feel like a complete failure as a parent, because if there's one thing that the Bible is good at, it's definitely good at putting a bunch of one-liner ideas out into the world without working them into an actual coherent plan that makes logical sense. Once there are pitfalls or any types of perfectly normal situations that life throws your way, the cookie-cutter situations that the Bible is set up for don't work anymore. And for this autistic guy, it caused me to feel like a complete failure. I believe the reason for this is twofold. The first was the undiagnosed autism. The second was my pretending to be a girl. It's like my whole life I've been trying to be a typical woman, when all along I was an atypical man. And now I realize there was nothing wrong with this. Battling with the feelings inside myself that I was both a failure because I knew that there was something wrong with me, but also because I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. I checked out emotionally about 6 months after my second son was born. I realized later that I was suffering from postpartum depression. But at the time, what I did was I took an over-the-road truck driving job and came home only on the weekends. This job lasted for 2 years, and during that time my husband did a great job of taking care of a toddler and a baby while I drove a truck. Once I came back off the road and I was home full-time, the kinds of things that I have done with my kids throughout their lives have been activities-based. I started to realize that my role in their lives was not the biblical role of a mother, but more like the role of a father. I took them to the beach, I took them to see the fireworks, I took them fishing, I took them hiking and camping, I took them to Busch Gardens and on roller coasters, took them to the mall. It seems that the types of things I've done have all been dad things. Sure, I've also taken them to doctor's appointments and school meetings, but so has their dad. I realized that if it weren't for their dad, I really couldn't have done it on my own. I am autistic, and I'm perfectly fine admitting to my disability. It just would have been nice to have been diagnosed before I became an adult, so that when I got married and decided to have children, we could have made that decision in an informed way. Not that I would have not decided to have children, but I really did have to rely so much on my husband for support, and it definitely forced his life into something that was different than what he deserved. You know, if there was a scale that measured how many diapers were changed by me compared to how many were changed by their dad, the award would go to their dad. The award would also go to their dad in categories for bottles fed, books read, baths given, dinners made, wet pajamas changed, and crying eyes dried. He has stepped up every time. He also took them to the park, played with them on the playground, ran around with them in the backyard, always spent all of his own time doing whatever the kids were interested in, and he always put their needs first. The sacrifices that he made for them go beyond just his own personal time. He has had his dream of making it in the comic book industry ever since he was a kid. He even had a job working as an inker for Marvel Comics, working on a Spider-Man family comic book about 13 years ago, after he had been working on smaller books for years, going to comic book conventions, doing sketches for people, getting his name out there. We used to bring my little brother sometimes and make a fun time of it. But he had finally gotten hired by Marvel when we were living with my parents temporarily after I had decided to stop driving a truck. We actually went to the comic convention in Orlando, and he signed comic books with his artwork inside that same year that my parents told him that he had the devil inside of him, and they kicked him out into the streets. I remember specifically that they told him they weren't kicking the kids and I out, just him. I told my mom that where the father of my kids went, I went, so by her kicking him out, she was kicking all of us out. We didn't have the time for him to continue to try to get more comic book work, so he was forced to get a job working at Walmart on the stock crew, and he has been working retail ever since. I would love to be able to be the one who pays the bills so he could have a chance to try to get back into the comic book industry again. But now that I realize why every job I have ever had has either only lasted for a short time or has needed to be a temp job, I'm starting to understand my own limitations. I'm admitting my vulnerabilities, and I believe that it will help me to grow. My husband makes an amazing role model for what being a great parent is. I just have to say that I'm so grateful that he has been in my life, and that he was the one that I chose to be the father of my children. I mentioned in one of my previous videos that as an autistic person, I learn the most by watching what other people are doing. He has shown me how to be a better parent. I can't say that we both didn't start out not making mistakes. We both were going to the cult church that I grew up in when we first got married, and we definitely tried the whole spare the rod, spoil the child approach when our kids were rebellious teenagers. But then we realized that if we wanted to show our kids love, we needed to show our kids love. And that goes for everything. How can someone say I love you with their words and then hit them with their hands at the same time? It's idiotic. It's also biblical. The point is, I'm just glad that we grew and learned together, and that I learned what I did from my husband. He made me want to be a better man. Until next time, let's all strive for the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you.